that you'll be able to understand the difference between norm referencing, criteria referencing, and formative, summative, and iterative assessments. Okay. So I guess there's terminology there that you may or may not be familiar with that we'll explain during the course of the afternoon. All right. The next one is to develop an outcomes-based criteria rubric for an assessment of your own, if you don't already have one. If you do, you can develop one for the next assignment, and then evaluate the advantages of what I've called criteria assessment-based referencing. Is perhaps the wrong way around to phrase it, but to evaluate whether it's any good or not. So for you to think about, what's the point of doing criteria referencing? Go on in and have a seat. Smile. Right, but before we do that stuff, okay, I just want to pick up on the things that we were doing last week. That was the question I had on the board last time around, wasn't it? Yes, and I've added one below that. What do you want to happen during any exercise? And that's any exercise that you give your students to do. Okay, so talk about that for a couple of minutes and write those down if you haven't got them written down. Come and stand right up close to the board to get rid of any glare if there is any. Okay? Any questions? Oh, excellent. Classes are all like this, aren't they? Any questions? No. You were clear and lucid. Oh, I'll do this.
Check the
Yeah, for anybody recapping what happened.
in the taxonomy.
Yeah.
What did it understood what he was saying.
Okay, that's the opposite of some of what I put down. Confusion, discomfort. It was the first time I've been.
That was the question.
I've been learning rather than teaching.
Who's this, the Blue Kingston Traveller?
But yeah, the sense of uncertainty about getting it right is important. But then particularly, I'm obviously examining all these terms in a fair amount of detail. There's a big spread of lots of very familiar words, possibly in unfamiliar combinations. And I'm kind of immediately reflecting on my assumptions about the kinds of ways students would interpret my language that I use in assessment. So I felt put in the position of a student again, which was initially strange but welcome. And got a bit more of an empathetic understanding of them, because I'm then forced to deal with something unfamiliar. Where usually when I reflect, I'm using my own assumptions.
Okay, Red Cruiser Edge.
Yeah, there is that satisfaction of getting to it. So, how about you? What do you want?
When I was talking about that, I started relating to my research because I did research in knowledge transfer, and knowledge transfer from the expert to the people. So stuff like this about how transfer knowledge that they have.
It's challenging, isn't
Okay. Since you talking is not very good film material, and obviously me talking is much better film material. Since you're all looking at me attentively, you guys in the middle, what happened during the taxonomy exercise? Yeah.
Challenging task.
Right. Okay. You guys? That's another expression of challenge, isn't it? Right. Heavy going.
became a bit clearer.
Okay. The back table, anything?
Overwhelmed.
It's got us all interactive there.
Oh, okay. Anybody learn anything?
Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, what about, yeah, sorry.
I think it's the first time I've understood. I mean, I've seen the terms before, but by doing the exercises as you put it down, I realised what you meant then by going up the levels of understanding.
What was going on, Anne?
Clarity of the words in my head I hadn't realised before the meaning.
So there was some. Okay, we'll call it clarity of words. All right, Simon, you wanted to say something?
I put examination of terms, which I suppose is towards clarity of words, but reflection on my assumptions. And I also felt that, because it was my first session here as well, that there was a sort of empathetic understanding with my students, now having to deal with a non-specialism myself, if you like, or some non-specialist terminology.
So you kind of got I know I shouldn't do this, right? When you do write stuff on the board, you shouldn't reword what the students say, which is exactly what I'm now going to do.
Okay.
All right, but we could call
I am quite verbose.
No,
so.
that's okay. It's just right. You might call that giving you some sort of insight.
Okay.
Okay. Now, the other you know, when I'm always doing this thing where I go, okay, you're going to be teachers and I'm the teacher, and you should be thinking about what I'm doing as the teacher because you're going to be teachers too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay, when you write on a whiteboard, what do you want the students to be doing? Okay, so if I write all of this up here, because I'm getting feedback from each of the groups, what's the point? None of you have written anything down, have you? Okay, so if I was going to give this purpose and point, I would say, as I write the terms on the whiteboard that you come up with, that you know, that happens during the exercise, write them down, please. All right? Write them down, please. Or take a photograph, but again, obtain some notes of it. Yeah, that's a good point, because I could, if I was using the kit properly, do exactly that, couldn't I? I could be writing on one of those electronic jollies and get a capture of it. Yeah. So, if you do this, and I know I'm talking over you for doing the thing I've asked you to do, if you do this, there has to be some other purpose to it, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay, what is a global term that you could then apply to all of these? If you took all of these and said that in some form they had to do with learning, what might you call all of this?
Reflection.
Reflection might be a good one. I know I'm fishing for a term, aren't I? You could tell I'm fishing for the right answer. Okay, reflect on the process of questioning as well, because if I'm fishing for a right answer, why don't I just tell you?
Brainstorming?
Yes. What is brainstorming? What's reflection?
Externalizing.
You think with a method?
Yes, you're externalizing. I'm getting you to put your thoughts out there, and you're giving some idea about whether I've understood. You've understood. To me, I get whether I've understood what you've done. As it were. Okay, what's happening, this is in my mind, okay, me the teacher, this is what I want to happen. I want you to process stuff. Okay? Forget the stuff bit. But I want you to do some processing. Don't I? And every activity that you get is aimed at getting you to process material. Now, as Simon says, in your cases, it might be completely new material, or in Anne's case, it might be material you've come across before, but you're processing it again. Okay, I think that this is the point. And this is the way that you get that to take place. You know, education in a nutshell. What's learning? Well, in order to be learning, you've got to be processing material. Okay, so what do you do to process the material?
Internalize it.
Well, yeah, you have to internalise it, but you have to think about it, don't you?
Meaning of it,
Thinking about it is processing it, isn't it? So the challenge becomes, when you're teaching your subject, rather than just talking about it, because the student can sit there looking at you or gazing out the window, or giving their consent to learn or not, minute by minute, if you get them to be doing something that demands some processing of the material, you're in a better place for learning to take place. Yes, okay. Well, you know, that's me saying, you know, if you condense all of the stuff that you do as a teacher into it, one sentence, it's about getting the students to process material. Now, you might call this engagement, mightn't you? That they engage with the material. But I think it's a bit more than that. I think it's something that is actively going on in their minds. Right? That's the challenge. Okay, and that's the answer to the next question, isn't it? Okay, good. Now then, that's the recap bit, so you can kind of draw a line under that, and now we'll do assessment. And I have, guess what? There's an activity. You have here some issues to do. They're not, well, yeah, they are issues. You have, I've called it issues of assessment, but these are assessment terminology, all right? These are terms to do with assessment that I want you in your little group of all men to go through them and write on the back or the front or somewhere on them what you think these terms are in assessment terms. All right? Okay, just before you begin, folks, listen, before you... My teacher presence has eluded me today. Before you begin, all right, I just want to tell you about the WebQuest thing that I'm putting on pen drives for you. Okay, the WebQuest thing has a little bit of instruction that says click on the index page and then the WebQuest itself fires up. It's a contained few pages of, I don't know, they're written in HTML, I don't know what you call it, but it's, so they're all linked together and there are links to external sites about assessment, okay? So in order not to cover everything to do with assessment that you ever needed to cover, it's part of the materials on a WebQuest, and I'm using it as a way to illustrate to you that if you get even mildly technologically capable, and Word will now do this. This is not written in Word, but Word will do this. You can construct these little web quests for yourself and put them somewhere to give to the students so that you can go, well, okay, we're going to focus on this little bit of content today, but the rest of it you can engage with because you've got your web quest to go away with. All right? So those of you that have not given me pen drives need one of these. The WebQuest on a disk. I'll write the disks back, so all you do is lift the folder off this disk, shove it onto your computer, off you go. All right? Who needs one of these?
Thank you.
All right. So the task is to look at those terms, the assessment terms, see what you think that they mean. No, to look at the terms and see what you think they mean in terms of assessment. I think you'll fit it on the disk, don't you? I think it fit on your... Yeah, well, you don't need that then. There you go. Thank you. I'll have the discs back for next time. Well, next class.
So it's sufficient. Or is it about the reliability of a source, or the sorts of ways in which we use that word when we're explaining?
Reliability of your platform.
talks about it.
And the volume that you're
It's sufficient, like, what are the inspections?
Who's got sufficient?
I got validity.
Where's reliability issue? Can you reduce the results by showing you can get stimulus efficiency, I'm not sure.
Sufficiency is about the quality or amount. So sufficiency, I mean, I often say there is not sufficient critical reflection in some students feedback, not sufficient. Well, it's an issue about lack.
So it relates to the outcome then,
Yeah.
It's like condemning, it's not.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is don't give the answer about that one, then other people what the hell is space validity?
I mean,
and then the assessments give you sufficient
whether it's real
evidence that maybe a few
Give something up. You know, like, it's sufficient for you.
Okay, I have a 2 gig byte store without an E. And I've got an integral 8 gig that look very, very similar.
Yeah, they're both coming in.
And I've got a nice little dark blue Kingston.
Is much more general, isn't it? And I can't like that. Sufficiency. Fairness, inclusiveness. See, these two definitely related in some way, aren't they? Yeah, but we're talking about fairness for the whole
tutorial
group of students, whereas inclusivity refers to specific groups of students. So if you're not inclusive in your assessment, language, style of questioning, yes, I got the nature of the questioning, whether you need some complicated terminology to exclude people from the assessment, or whether you want to use complicated terminology in order to exclude people because it's part of the assessment. Okay? So you've definitely got aspects of that impinge on fairness.
or reliability.
If you define that, you also get into the definition of this one. This one is fairly obvious what we need.
I suppose that
No student given an unfair test, right? Or that the test is administered in a fair way for all the students involved. You don't give some student half an hour. What you do is the student comes in late, they've got good reason for coming in late. Those types of issues are
is it real, is it original,
inclusiveness is slightly different, but it definitely involves sufficiency. These two, this one is kind of administrative.
it's also, sorry, I just kicked you completely not by design. Sort of questions of authenticity are kind of dependent on context as well. So it's when something is out of context that feels inauthentic. So how you contextualise something might give you an insight into that.
so in context of the
Okay, that one, what you're talking about is probably that. Okay. That's whether everybody has the ability to do the assessment, if you like. There isn't any kind of unfairness in the way the assessment is conducted. Yes. Well, obviously, you don't do the assessment on top of the building when there's no
thing that I'm doing at the moment is trying. Well, my expectation is that for a particular project, my students will learn aspects of project management. I'm a bit worried that they won't fulfil that. But it's really about being a good project manager. If you work collaboratively, something that definitely comes up if you're doing group work.
Of races that don't tend to reach the whatever 6-foot height requirement as it used to be. You go, that's inclusiveness, but it also has manifestation in assessment. Yes, absolutely. Don't get it. Yeah. Good point.
Extra time needed to form the national multi-task build. So a colleague of Rick said, well, we can't use that very UK specific term. We wouldn't necessarily understand what we mean there.
Yeah.
Colloquialisms.
Yes, they are excuse people, but they're subtle, aren't they?
Like it being accessible to everybody.
And it needs to be quite what might be something that is excluding people, even though
So there'll be a level of
one of the ways of avoiding that is to in fact get exams papers screened by someone else.
Yeah, that's the best.
So you have a process for the examination. Most of the time we do marking and second marking, and that's part of moderation.
So like we do,
But we
we have
should
one
be thinking
exam
about moderating
in the
things
programme,
beforehand
one
as well,
exam.
if we're doing it really
And
well.
we have the flexibility in that
You do,
individuals
right,
have like
right.
learning needs assessment, they can have a room on their own,
We
they
don't
can have extra time and
But the
like,
fact is,
it's like,
There might be some things in the
yeah,
assessment of this program
but we should also look at it from like topics they can choose and everything.
It's come with membership, so it's actually in the exam paper.
But go on, that's sufficient. What would you put? I've just put, if the assessment gives you sufficient evidence,
So they've been excluded. There's also a fairness aspect to it as well. Okay.
In this to measure whether they have met
Yes, they are all parts of assessment. This validity and reliability tend to be terms that are used when people are looking at assessment to see whether they do those two things. And these ones get a little bit left out. This one is to do with good practice in assessment. Okay, and these other ones, this one's to do with fairness, coverage, and simply whether you can manage it or not. Whether you can manage it, whether the student can manage it, and if you talk about management, it has an impact on fairness too, doesn't it? So if I say to you, one of the assessments we should do in this presentation, I think I'll find a story.
What two references?
You have to report it to us live. Tells you what they are.
Well, the effective itself is reliable enough to get to learn.
Read it out so much you can get it too. So you go, what's base movement is, whether it does what it says.
No, I
One that's really
think
interesting is content.
So the assessment. Well, because she's done reliability, we thought we had good concept.
took reliability with me.
That's right.
Measuring.
I was doing my test with my students, so
Very reliable. Yeah.
factual knowledge.
We think we had a go.
Right, so what do you think reliability is?
And with factual
Well,
knowledge, now I know
the
that
captain
you
believes
can
it, so there's some consistent in measuring people. So it's
Consistent. Okay, there are aspects of this answer. One is the student. So reliable, would the assessment be reliable if the student was tested today and then tested next week and then tested 2 months later? Would we expect them to get the same result each time around? Well, that's part of what you go. So yes, it is. But that's not reliable because 6 weeks down the road the student might have forgotten it all, unless you warn them that the test is coming up and you give them a week to prepare again, and you go, the same student ought to get the same result. Obviously there's a period of time that you go, no, there's bound to be trajectory upwards, isn't there? So reliability with the student checking against the student isn't necessarily what you want, because actually what you want to be seeing is improvement against the test. Let's say we set multiple choice, 100 multiple choice questions about assessment, and you get 71. And 2 weeks later, what we want to see is you're getting 75, right? So reliability about the student isn't something that you can actually check. What you can check is reliability of the assessors. So, if I assess this student today, and the student produces the same script in a week's time, do they get the same result? Because of the assessor being reliable. Okay, and the next parallel is, of course, if you mark it, do you give it the same result? So
is that what you mean by rubrics you call it?
Rubrics improve reliability. So you have a reliable outcome B, and then a reliable outcome U using the same rubric to give it the same result. And of course, external would agree. Yes. Well, yes, and getting the same measurement every time. Yeah? So you use the same scale, but you get the same measurement every time. And that would be reliable. Right?
I've had an issue emerging with rubrics at the moment.
No, you don't.
No, I definitely. Let's say I don't as much as my students do. I recently introduced, I mean Sarah did your course last year, so I've been adopting some of her rubrics or adapting some of them. And what it makes me is very hard marker. I think possibly less generous than I've been.
So that could be the descriptions you apply in the rubrics. Okay. But what we're arguing is that by using it, you're doing stuff that is making it more manageable, that is making it fairer, that makes it involved in fairness, it makes it more transparent because the student's aware what you're marking against. It makes it more where's the reliable one? It makes it more it makes it more reliable because you're showing to the other markers where you're making your decisions and where you have made the decision. What the reliability question then calls into account is whether you call it good or very good, because you're feeling crap, or you're feeling great, or you're feeling predisposed to the student, or whatever it is. But rubrics remove some part of the subjectivity of the process.
Wherein lies my problem, I think, in some ways, because my students, I think, have been used to. I like the grey area of interpretability in marks. There's some things,
still good, very good.
But I think I've become more deliberate and more rigorous.
It's a good thing.
It is a good thing, but the transition for students is difficult.
The argument would be, well, you shouldn't have been doing the first one in the first place. They should all be done like that, shouldn't they?
Sure.
So that you give all of the rubric to the student beforehand. You say, this is how you're going to be marked. Okay, in order to get over here on this outcome, you need to be doing these things. You need to be doing this outcome, but you need to be doing it very well in order to get 8 out of 10. Right? And I can't see a way of that being argued against. I mean, I've heard arguments against it, but you go, well, the outcome is what? Be able to perform a play in character consistently throughout the whole performance. Done very well. Some you wouldn't write that, but some lapses you go, well, you were here because it was easy to judge. Right? And you remove some of the kind of things like 5. And one of the things that we do as a university, of course, is we aggregate up these scores, and we've had plenty of time to discuss this, so we'll have a bit of a recap. All right? Now, what I would like you to do is, I'm talking to the board. What I'd like you to do is to make some notes for yourself about these particular terms, all right? And issues will come up as we discuss them. And I will probably go into rant mode ever so slightly because I feel quite strongly about assessment. It's something you might know already. Who anybody on the assessment? No, it was a student that was dealt with the test. Okay. I'm on the University's Assessment Working Party, so if you get stuff about rubrics later on, you'll know where it came from. Let us pick a term with this group. Pick one and tell me about it. We'll do them all. We'll do them quite quickly.
Just go with sufficiency and manageability.
Okay, we'll do sufficiency and manageability. All right, so I shall write them up here so that you know what you're doing. Let's do sufficiency. Okay, so I'm not going to write all the stuff down here. We're just going to talk about it, and you can edit out the stuff that you think is a pearl or not.
They're both to do with quantity.
Yeah. Okay, so they're both to do with quantity. What's the difference between them, then, Jim?
You've got enough with one and not too much with the other.
Okay, so sufficiency is to do with, do you have enough assessment to cover all of the outcomes? So are your assessments sufficient to cover the outcomes? Okay? Now this raises, immediately we get into issues to do with assessment. This raises one of the most interesting issues to do with outcomes-based assessment. Now, we are a university that says we assess by using outcomes, right? All of you have a list of outcomes on your module specifications. If you don't, something wrong. Okay, so sufficiency becomes assessment. Is there sufficient assessment opportunity for the outcomes? Okay, one of the problems is that we have multiple assessment of outcomes. Do you know what I mean? Outcomes, and we say this is outcome 1, this is outcome 2, this is assessment 1, and we say it's covered there, it's covered there. This is assessment 1, that's assessment 2, that one's covered there, and then God forbid we have a third assessment, but the exam covers those as well. Multiple assessment of outcomes. Rubbish. Okay? Because we're not assessing outcomes. We're assessing the assessment. So what we tend to do is we have assessment 1 and we say this one is worth 1/3 of the result. No, let's make it something different. Let's say this is worth 1/4 of the result, that one's worth 1/4 of the result, and that one's worth 1/2 of the result. And the student gets 10 out of 25 here, 8 out of 25 here, and 60 out of 50 for that one. What outcomes have we assessed? We haven't got a clue, have we? Because we're aggregating up this way to go, that's your result, 18 or 34? Yes? Student got 34. But we can't say they're brilliant here. Oh, let's make this 3 outcomes. Let's call that outcome 3. Okay? They're working in the aviation industry, these students. This is taking the plane off. This one is flying the plane. Alright? This one is landing the plane. Okay? Let's give the student a 12 there. So, I want to get them to pass. 40, 10. Alright? They get 40. Students got 40. They can fly an aeroplane. Right? But we haven't actually found out whether they can do that one. Have we? We've conflated and aggregated, and they're perfectly good at flying it, they're perfectly good at taking it off, but they're rubbish at landing, but they still pass. Right? But outcomes-based assessment says we should be assessing that one, that one, and that one, and the student should only pass the module if they've passed that one, and that one. But what we tend to do is conflate and aggregate. Okay, note all of that down, because I will be talking about it many, many, many times, alright? And you will find that in your programs, you are conflating and aggregating outcomes, and you ought not to. And the problem mostly stems from multiple assessment of the same outcome. Make a note. And all that stems from sufficiency. If you don't understand it, ask me again. I'm quite happy to rant some more about it. Brilliant pilot. Wonderful land takeoff. Fantastic. Lovely smooth flight. But we crashed when we landed.
But Peter, this is how we are doing here, right?
Yes, it's exactly what we do here. Except on this programme, where we don't.
Okay.
Well, we do.
Yeah, you have written it like this, yes.
We do. What I try and do on this programme is avoid it as far as possible. Okay? And what is needed is a massive cultural shift.
Sometimes you find if you put a sort of single assessment in the validation document, you get to change the validation.
Yes, and there are ways around it that fudge it, and there are ways around it that are good. But really, if you make a note about this, first of all, I'll talk a little bit more about it, because you can obviously sense that I can go on and on and on, can't you? Right? If you've finished making a note about this, right? Think about what the solution is to the problem that we have. Okay? And our problem is not to do with the setting of assessments, it's to do with the way that we mark. Yes? And you go, you know what I was doing last week, where we go, well, okay, the graduate attribute is X, yes? And we say the modules that this graduate has done, modules are Y and Z, but Y and Z must contribute directly to X. And you ought to be able to see a way that that takes place. So we get a little bit further down this and we go, actually the outcomes A, B and C contribute to Y, the module outcome, contribute to the graduate attribute. What you're saying is that it depends on how well these are written. Okay? And that is the absolute key to outcomes-based assessment. Absolutely. Okay? And you then get to a place, I know that the take-off landing thing is a little bit glib, right? But what it is it makes it very obvious about the distinction between them, and then therefore what conflation is. Okay? For the UKPSF, which is this program that you get, well, you know, qualified teacher HE, this one is, can you plan lessons? Can you deliver lessons? Can you assess? Can you evaluate? Right? They're good outcomes. They're big outcomes, aren't they? And they apply. And we say, well, okay, are you a qualified HE teacher if you can really plan well, deliver well, assess well, but a rubbish at evaluation? Right? It tends not to work like that, because people tend to be good at them all if they're going to be any good. Right? But we're saying how you write that, how it aggregates up, and how it's part of the graduate attribute for the level of the program that you're talking about, these things become obvious things that you think about when you're writing these for the modules, and indeed when you're writing them, as I've done up here, when you're writing them for the day. Yeah? We go, what's assessment about? Well, assessment's about criteria referencing and norm referencing, which we haven't even covered yet, but it would help you to know about that in order to be able to assess well. Yeah? So, I mean, I agree. The take-off landing one is not what we want. What we want is a pilot who's capable of thinking like a pilot, isn't it? And can deal well with crises. Because taking off, landing and flying are minimum requirements. I'd like to get into an aeroplane with an experienced pilot who's been through a couple of dramas, so that when it gets to the drama on my flight, God forbid, they're perfectly capable of doing it. Yeah? And you go, that's a different outcome than being able to take off, fly and land, isn't it? So we add take off, fly, land, think like a pilot. Very difficult to measure the think like a pilot one. Alright? And then that becomes, how do you write the outcome, and what do you write as the levels of achievement of that outcome? And it all becomes wrapped up and critical. Okay, it's all very, very difficult to do well. But that's not a reason for not trying to do it, is it? Okay. And that was only the first one. We're going to get through these by 3 o'clock. Yeah, I'll come back to this because there's obviously more to say. Manageability.
Realistic expectation.
Yeah, okay, realistic expectation of what the student's going to do in the time allowed. The student, manageable for the student. Yeah, make a note of that one. It's a good one. Manageable for the student, and then the obvious parallel is manageable for you guys. Yes? Can you mark it? Can you turn it around? And obviously there are implications for expediency for you here. Okay. You know that we spoke last week about Anderson and Krathwohl and Bloom, and that we looked at a taxonomy of cognitive demand, didn't we? And I'm doing this thing. I don't know what I'm doing there, but you know what I mean. Cognitive demand. Down here we've got knowledge testing, recall. Okay. If your outcome is to do with recall, the manageability of the recall test is the VLE and MCQs, isn't it? Yes, no marking for you, no problem with the assessment, it is valid, reliable, fair and all of the rest of those things because all you're doing is testing recall. Perfect. Okay, when you get to let's test the ability to create and make judgments about the creation and the creative process indeed, you go, that's much harder to do. And it's much harder to manage because it takes much longer to mark it, much longer to think about it. Right? And we tend to push our manageability down to the level where we go, okay, we'll do MCQs. Because we can check that, can't we? And if we do reliability next, or if I just hint at reliability, MCQs are reliable, aren't they? Student does the test, they get 8 out of 10. Another marker marks it, they give it 8 out of 10. It's reliable. Yeah? It's very reliable. Multiple choice knowledge testing, very, very reliable. As we go up cognitive demand, they get to be harder to assess and less reliable, and much, much harder to write. Okay, let's. Are we okay for sufficiency and manageability? Yeah? Okay, manageability, let's just make a little bit more emphasis. Manageability gets more difficult the higher up the cognitive demand you go, because it becomes more difficult to manage workload, it becomes more difficult to manage resubmissions, and more difficult to manage the pile of scripts. And so manageability tends to drive some of the assessment that you engage in. Alright, what's next? Middle group, what would you like to tackle? Huh? Nothing. Skip over us, go to the other guys.
Liability and validity?
Let's leave those to the end if you don't mind.
Inclusiveness?
Okay. Oh, they happen to move out of the office next door because I've been shouting too much. Inclusiveness and? Fairness, okay. Notice I don't write in capital letters at the start of the words. Right? It tends to be that if you write like that, the students will copy down what you write. And non-capital letters for these is the right way to be writing them. Someone once told me.
Hang on, so they do write it down if you use capital letter?
No, what I'm saying is that the way that you would write that normally is without a capital letter. If I wrote inclusiveness with a capital letter, students tend to write down what you write on the board, so they put a capital letter. It doesn't need a capital letter because it's not a proper noun, is it?
Nevertheless, I put capital letters.
But then you've got those rogue students who don't. Okay, you guys in the middle. Inclusiveness. Do you want to deal with them together? Let's deal with inclusiveness first. And the rest of you can make notes as the pearls from this group evade the air. Now they're debating. Who's going to say
The ability for the assessment to include all those to group.
Yeah, well, everybody, yes. Okay, so does the assessment allow everybody to have a fair go at it? And the example, the rather stupid example that Coco's going to object to, I know, because it's a bit too literal, is you don't set an assignment in this room if the elevator's not working for people who have wheelchairs. Because they get excluded from the assessment. Okay, Sally's example was rather better when we were discussing it at her table, and that is you don't use culturally specific references in testing, or you don't use culturally specific colloquialism in the setting of tests. Am I making sense? There was another brilliant one. Like, what was it? Case studies that you said? There was a case study. Oh, Sahar was you, wasn't it? Sahar was saying, was it you? One of the two of you. Using a case study as the exam question, but the case study was wholly UK, but the exam was being set in Singapore, say. And you go, well, it doesn't make sense, does it? So you make sure that you make assessments inclusive. One of the suggestions I would make to you is if you write your own assessments is that you get someone to moderate them. Okay? So part of the process that you use here is that they are moderated. Now, I know that here we have to send examinations to the examination office, don't we? I don't know whether they moderate them or not. I've never been through the process myself. Okay?
It's supposed to be external, be approved by the external.
And some examinations, some assessments have to go to the external. The external for this programme has never asked for them because they're a part of the module specification. They're actually quite detailed for this programme, right? And I'm fairly certain that they are fairly inclusive of teachers. I mean, if they're not, let me know, all right? If you feel excluded in some way because I've used odd language, let me know, right? But there's a point there, isn't there? That a second pair of eyes moderating your assessment might pick up on something to do with inclusiveness that you haven't considered. There are subtleties, aren't there?
Sorry, Peter, do you mean to get someone to moderate your written assessment before the students...
Before the students do it.
So before it's implemented, right?
Yeah. So you would give it to Janet. Just flick it at Janet and say, cast your eye over that for inclusiveness and spelling mistakes and right. And the other things too, validity is another one that you could get the moderation screening to do validity for you.
Right.
Happy with that? Fairness. Are you quite unhappy with fairness? Do I need to say anything about it? The one that we usually link with fairness, and it's not one that I've given you, transparency. Transparency. Heard of this?
Yeah. So in terms of like giving you marking criteria, assessment criteria, so students can see what's been happening.
What is the link between fairness and transparency?
Right. If it's transparent, it's going to be fair.
It may not.
Well, it might not. I'm arguing that it would. the more transparent the examination is to the student, the greater the likelihood of it being fair. Right? And the thing I was talking about with the other group, it tends to be about marking. Transparency in marking shows that it's been fairly conducted. Okay, so we do exactly what I would say. We go, outcome 1, here's the description of outcome, that's the outcome, here's the level 1, sorry, no, let's do this differently. Here's what you get 1 to 5, here's 6 to 10, here's what you get 11 to 15 marks for, and there's a description of what you get for those. Okay, so that's the outcome. This is the criteria, criteria based, what the hell did I call it? I called it something, I want to use the same terms. What did I call it? CABR. Criteria Achievement Based Referencing. Okay, so there is a level of achievement that describes the outcome. And you say to the student, you got 4. So over here, they got 4. That is a transparent process, and it makes it fairer. Right. That's just for this little part of it, isn't it? All right? And I have this discussion with my head of school on a fairly regular basis, because he doesn't quite like that. The external does, and has insisted on it. Okay, so he's had to buy into it. Hasn't quite gone as far as I would like him to, but he's getting there. Okay? Anything else to do with it? Obviously transparency. Transparency is to do with all of the stuff that you tell a student. Is the process transparent to them? Do they know what they've got to do? How long it's got to be, approximately? All of those things that make the process transparent, but also fair. Because if you say, well, it's 5,000 words, and you accept 6,000 from one student and only 4,000 from another, but the 4,000 is brilliant and the 6,000 is equally brilliant, but they've gone 1,000 words over, is that fair? So part of transparency is saying it needs to be 5,000 plus or minus 10%. That gives a fairness thing. But then you need to say to the student, at 5,500 words, I stop reading, because that's fair. Yeah? And so anything above that doesn't get accessed, doesn't get included. That's where I stop, because that's transparent, and I'm telling you how I'm going to do it, and everybody understands that, so it's fair for everybody. Yeah? So they're interrelated. That doesn't mean that, but they're closely related with each other, okay? Yes!
Okay, when you say 500, some of them, obviously, they're going to send you back 700. So how do you deal with it?
Well, right, and that's what I'm saying here to Owen, right? You go, I've got the script, I've got it electronically, okay? So that you go, that's, let's call it 5 words, okay? So what I wanted you to do as the assessment task was write a sentence about assessment, okay? That's only 10 words long, 5 words long. Sentence about assessment, 5 words long. If you write, I want it to be 5 words plus or minus 10%. That's the margin, all right? That allows the student to write 6 words, and you say, in the transparent description of the assessment setting, I will mark 5 to 10, 5 words plus or minus 10%. When I get to the 7th word, I'm not reading it. So you go, there it is. Anything beyond here doesn't get read. But you've told them that. Yeah? And the argument goes, I'm containing your word limit to 5 to make it manageable, partly, but also because I think you should be developing the skill to write concisely and succinctly. And 5 words does it, 7 doesn't. Right?
I had one once where the students had written the assignment, it was a 2,000 word assignment, but had heard in class that if you put it in a box or a table, that's a and there was 15,000 words in tables. It was like,
or an appendix. Yeah.
No, it wasn't appendix.
Tables, appendices don't count. Okay, but all right. But it's part of this business, isn't it? You tell them absolutely everything, right? And you give them a huge assignment that says, here's the assignment. You know, there's 4 pages of description of the assignment, but the assignment's only 300 words long. But we've been totally transparent about the process. Obviously, I'm exaggerating, aren't I? Right? Any debate about this?
It's okay. It's okay.
Right. What I'm trying to portray to you is that you know, you can go and look at assessment practices now. I'm sure you can go and look at your own modern assessment practices, or the assessment practices you guys do as nurses, and go, there are problems. There are issues that we have with fairness, transparency, marking criteria, pre-moderation for inclusiveness. We've got all kinds of stuff that we can improve on. Guess what one of your assignments is? Improve on an assessment. Okay, have a look at the module spec for the assessment, 70 something. Yeah, whatever it is. If you look at it tonight, you'll be able to go, I can do that. With the WebQuest stuff that you've got on the terminology that's on the WebQuest, you'll go, gee, I can do that now. Okay, this leaves us now. What terms does this leave us? Back group?
Authenticity.
How many?
Authenticity.
Oh, I love that one. Authenticity. And what else?
Validity.
Okay.
You saved it for us.
Yeah, I did. I saved it especially for you guys, because you're a big group, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
See, that's fair, right?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 6, there were 7 of you. 5, that's right, that's fair. Okay, I can guarantee that I'm going to get the validity one wrong, so we'll draw on the psychologists, because it's their kind of area of country. We'll put them on the spot with validity questions. So we'll do authenticity first. What did you think?
We have
What? How am I looking? Come my hair or something.
it's real that it reflects the outcomes, the learning outcomes.
Well, okay. Let's deal with real. It reflects outcomes. We'll say yes if the outcomes are real. Okay? So authenticity isn't to do with the outcomes, it's to do with the usefulness of it, if you like. So, is the assessment authentic? Think about your own assessment. Better yet, think about the PGCPD assessment for assessing assessment. Where I say to you, what I want you to do is take one of your own assessments and redevelop it to make it better against authenticity, validity, reliability, fairness, transparency, yada, 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 yada. Right? Is that a good assessment of your ability to understand assessment. That's knocked all round, isn't it? Stop that. It's a genius assessment, isn't it? Because it does all kinds of things. It makes you think about the assessment process. It actually has a value to you because you're redeveloping one of your own assessments. And it's authentic to your daily lives because it's what you actually do, isn't it? You're going to be teachers and you're going to be assessing. So it's authentic to what you actually do. So Rhiannon's real is the word. Okay, here's the example. You're going to love this one. Making a salad. Being a chef, making a salad. What I want you to do by the end of the programme is be able to make a salad. Tasty salad. Let's add a creative word in there, alright? That's what I want you to do by the end of the programme. What is the assessment? Well, actually the assessment is write a recipe for making a tasty salad. Is it authentic? Is it reliable? Is it valid? This is one. No, because it isn't testing what you want to test. It's testing the capacity to write about making a tasty salad, isn't it? Okay, this authenticity business, what we've hinted at there, is a process called alignment. Specifically, constructive alignment. Okay? And here, you teach what it is that you want to teach, and you assess what it is. Oh, you did the wrong thing. Assess what it is that you've taught, and then you have the outcome. And alignment goes like that, obviously, that you say that these things are aligned with each other. So I've got the tasty salad over here. Okay, I've taught the tasty salad. What we've done is we've been in the kitchen and I've said, there's the cupboard of all of the, ingredients. Off you go, pick the ingredients, follow the recipe, I'll taste it and let you know whether it needs any more seasoning or not to come up with the tasty bit of the criteria. Yes? So that's the way I've taught that. I taught it all in the kitchen. And we had a wonderful, lovely lesson and everybody got immensely stuffed with tasty salad. But the assessment was right about it, and you can see that what actually has taken place is no, that's rubbish, let's do this slightly different now. Where's the thing? That what we've got is right about it, and we've taken a jag off the alignment thing, haven't we? I'm not seeing light bulbs, okay? I was expecting like neon things over everybody's head to go, okay.
Well, that's really hard to do sometimes, isn't it? Because, like, for example...
What, conjure up a light bulb?
That's very hard to do.
This thing?
Yeah, they're straight across.
Absolutely. And we come back to exactly what... there it is. Emphasis. We come exactly back to what do you write there? Yeah? How do you teach it? And then how do you assess it? This one being the most important. And it will effectively drive these other two things as well. So, you go, I'm going to write outcomes, but I'm going to be well aware that I can't assess them. So, do I change the outcome, or do I find a different way of assessing it? And by the way, they've got to be authentic, valid, reliable, transparent, fair, yada yada, at the same time.
Can you have some form of originality in the authenticity?
Originality in assessment is to do with... No, wait a minute. Your assessment has to be valid, reliable, authentic, fair, inclusive. If it can be original too, bonus. Right? The question will always be, is it valid and reliable? If it's original, the chances are that it's going to be valid. It's going to be testing what you set out. I'm telling you what that is now. Testing what you set out to test. The chances are it's going to be that, isn't it? Right? The question will be this one. This will be the tricky one. Okay? Because what you're doing is saying higher cognitive level, original type of assessment is going to be tend to be testing higher cognitive skill, I would imagine, which makes it less reliable. I think go for it. Okay. Right? I think go for it because these are so difficult to do anyway that anything that makes it more engaging is going to be a good thing. Obviously there are areas in yours where you go, there are safety issues. Okay? We're not going to try innovative design solutions to wings on airplanes, but we can computer simulate them, I'm assuming. Yeah? So we're not going to try in real life because people might get hurt.
Can I pursue a Catherman's decision there? The tasty bit, isn't that very subjective as well?
Well, of course it is, but you don't want a rubbish salad, do you?
No, I know, but you
No, it's not fair. You know, tasting something different.
yeah. What was
Well,
tasty to
everybody
me
would
were
know if
hate.
it tasted bad. If there was, like, there's something that is not to your taste but can still be recognisably a good salad, and you would expect an expert chef to know that.
Well, what are we talking about? What are we talking about? What thing are you talking about?
Relative.
And? Which one?
Reliable.
It's not reliable.
Yes, it is. It's reliability because you're saying my tasty gets a 10, your tasty gets a 5, aren't you?
Depending on your taste buds though.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. There's a difference between the markers, right? So it's not reliable.
No.
So we go, shall we take out the word tasty, or is it something we want to include, and we'll just have to give more of a definition of what tasty is to the markers so that they can make a more reliable decision. So, what do we do to get rid of tasty? Tell me. No, because that's the salad itself. All right, we've got a decent salad.
Right.
And we've got that as part of the description of the salad. Decent, competent, well-made, includes all the right ingredients, yada yada. Okay, what do we substitute there to make it more reliable so that you remove the unreliable component of different people having different taste? People don't
Genuine assessment system.
Sorry?
Genuine assessment.
No, I want you to change that to something else.
Prepared salad?
No, we've got that in here, haven't we? Well prepared, how does it look? These are different criteria. They're other things that you might use as alternatives, aren't they? So let's go back a little bit and go back to what Melly said. We'll change the assessment criteria. Okay, we'll remove tasty because it's unreliable. So we can include, what we talk about with the salad is we say well prepared, whatever that means, well presented, whatever that means, okay? And tasty, we say, well seasoned. Because we can know that, and it removes part of the reliability issue, doesn't it? Just a little bit. Yeah? So, again, I'm saying to you, it's this thing that is the problem.
But I don't know if I'm way off here, it's quite possible that I am. I was thinking about real-world conditions, and you would either be preparing a meal for somebody whose tastes you know, and that so the market could say, I would want a certain type of seasonings, and that would be one thing. Or you would be preparing it for like 50 people in a restaurant.
What are you talking about? You're talking about...
Yeah. Ben.
Aren't you? And what do we make the criteria? Do we make them clear, transparent, overt? We tell the student in advance what those criteria mean. So we say, what we're going to assess you against is a well-prepared, well-presented, well-seasoned salad. These things mean these terms. That's what you will be assessed against. And it's authentic. You are going to be chefs, therefore you're going to be preparing salads in real life, aren't you? That's what this program does. It prepares you for the thing that you want to do. Or it prepares you to be a more critical thinker, or a person who thinks like a teacher, right? That means that we do all of these things are assessed. It's an approximation of being a teacher, isn't it? But it's the best approximation that we can get to. It is authentic, it's reliable, it's valid, it's fair, it's transparent. Think about your own assessments. Do they do these things? You guys did health and safety kind of overrules some of it. Well, it does, because what you do is you disaggregate too much, and you get all of those things black and white, yes, no, can, can't do. And it's not competent nursing, is it? It's they can do 25 things safely. That's one for you guys to think about. So if one of you wants to do the assessment process and you want to review OSCEs, observed content, scientific observation, whatever the hell you call it, you know what I'm talking about? You don't?
No.
Okay. The rest of you talk amongst yourselves. When you are assessing your own students, there is a list, isn't there? You observe them, and that's got 25 things that, you know, can they talk to the patient nicely, inject them safely, fill the needle safely, give it the correct dosage. Yeah? That's called an OSCE. It's an observed OSCI, observed structured content indicator thing, something like that. It means something. But that's what you're doing, and you're observing them doing it, aren't you? You observe them injecting, you go check. You observe them measuring, you go check. That's called an OSCE. Well, have a look online. It might be OSKI, but it definitely is, the acronym is OSCE. And the O is definitely observed. And I think the S is structured. Right? It's what you've got is something that, yes. Well, I think all of you. It's used in all cases. But what you've got is health and safety overriding being a good nurse. Right? Because it has to. That you go, can you do all these things? Yes, you can, but it isn't good nursing or good health visiting. It's capacity to do those things. And that's one of the problems with the very specific disaggregation of outcomes. Okay? Right. It's nearly time for coffee, isn't it? Let's finish these guys off quickly. Reliability. And the one we're interested in here is what the psychologists would probably call no, it's not test retest, and it's not that kind of reliability, rather you call it test retest reliability, it's not what I want to talk about. What I'm talking about is reliability between markers. So if a student submits a script, one marker marks it, they give it 52, the next marker marks it, they give it 78, it's not reliable. Okay? So we should be getting reliability is the same mark for the same piece of work by the same marker at different times of the day, or different markers.
Iterating reliability.
Oh, thank you. How do you spell?
Rater.
Another R?
Yeah.
2 words?
Yeah.
So those are 2 words?
Mm-hmm.
Inter-rater, I can't. Thank you very much. Inter-rater reliability. So different markers, same result. Yeah? You're going to ask me something?
Yes.
Far away.
Different markers,
Same result.
same result. But sometimes I may say, oh, Peter, you will not fair on this script when I'm moderating.
Yeah?
And I'll say, okay, this is my judgment. Look at this, look at this.
The argument here goes that my judgment as an expert in the field should be the same as your judgment as an expert in the field. Okay? And we should get the same result. Okay, what I'm going to suggest to you is, of course, that reliability is improved if you have got outcomes-based, what did I call it? CABR. Criteria Achievements-Based Referencing improves reliability. I'll tell you something else that improves reliability for nothing. Having a grade scale that includes only 5 categories. Right? Not 100, as we do, 0 to 100%, but just 5. You get far, far greater inter-rater reliability if you use 5 categories than 100. Here's me today, I'm going, feels like a 60, right? And tomorrow I'm going, that 60 didn't feel like a 60, felt like a 48. Right? And you, marking it with me, that day went, 32, 75. Right? And we've not got inter-rater reliability. And we're not using a rubric, and we haven't really considered criteria achievement-based referencing, which we ought to. If you do this, you increase reliability. If you change your grade map to only have 5 grade points, pass, a third, fail, third, 2-2-2-1 first. Why would we ever give someone 68? Why don't we just say 2-1? Right? Because if we're saying 2-1, we can guarantee that the next time I mark it and I'm feeling a bit under the weather and I've missed, whatever, I'm still going to give it a 2-1. So I'm not going to give it 68 compared with 60. I'm going to give it 2-1. And we remove some of the problems that we get with boundaries and aggregation. Okay, and this is where you can see where I go with the university and go, why on earth would we be trying to do the business of going, ooh, I'm so good at this marking, this student is definitely a 67, and actually I'm that good, it's really a 67.3284. And tomorrow I'll be doing exactly the same thing, 67.3284, because I'm a goddamn robot at my marking. Right? But this is what we say to the students. This is what we say in every single exam that's marked out of percentages. You say, we are that good at marking that tomorrow, when you got 67% today, tomorrow you'll get 67% too. Because we are that good at it. And you should have that kind of faith in the marking system, shouldn't you? Right? We do. Every year we go, oh, A-levels, they're getting easier. Right? We don't go, teaching's getting better. We don't. That's another point altogether. But you get what I mean, don't you? Okay. So that's validity is, does it test what it sets out to test? Part of fairness as well. Okay. And my group over here have the exact definition because I gave it to them. Whose is that? That's what it is. Yours. Right. We've got different types of validity, and I know we need to get a cup of coffee because I've got agreed to meet a colleague at 3 o'clock as well, because I'm not busy enough as it is. We've got 4 types of validity. Base validity is a measure of the extent to which an examination looks like an examination in the subject concerned. So is it about the subject, broadly? Yeah? Content validity is the one where is to do with, does the content of the examination test the content of the specification? Broadly. Construct is the one that we're really interested in. Does it test actually what it says it's testing? So, this one, my little salad example, is not content validity, is it? It's not aligned, it's straying off content validity, because what we're doing is we're assessing the ability to write about making a salad rather than the capacity of actually making the salad. Yes? Okay, you'll be amazed at how often your examinations don't do content validity. They do something else because it's easier to measure. Okay, and the last one is predictive validity, which I guess is the extent to which the results of the assessment can be used to predict future behaviour or achievement. Okay, it says what it says, doesn't it? We will have coffee for 23¼ minutes. I make it 4 minutes past, so let's come back at 26 minutes